one thing that I did was I would just pick out a music track and just place it on the video and fade it out at the end, because I didn't know how to edit music at that point, and so I just fade it out and call it good. Today's storytelling tip is actually part 1 of 2 parts, and the reason is because it's going to be more practical and a little bit more technical. So this first part is actually more of the theory. I'm going to explain the tip, and then part 2 is showing you. I'm going to show you a screen capture. I'm going to show you my editing and my timeline so that you can see what I'm talking about and how I do that. So this part 1 of 2 parts, and part 2 will be coming out later this week. So today I want to talk about music and how much music has an impact on our stories, on our videos. And I think we all know that's how music is just so important, and just how much influence music has on how we feel, how our audience feels, and picking out a soundtrack that works for our video is important. I think we kind of know that. You want to pick something that matches the style and kind of the tone of your video. And so it's important to do that. And when I first was starting in my video editing, one thing that I did was I would just pick out a music track and just place it on the video and fade it out at the end, because I didn't know how to edit music at that point, and so I just faded out and call it good. The tone kind of worked, and if the build-up in the song matched my video story, I was like, sweet, that's a great coincidence. But the thing is, it didn't quite work, because when you have your story, you have kind of like a flow. Hopefully you have your story or your story structure where it kind of goes up and down. It kind of has this wave, and it builds to an emotional climax, and then it kind of falls down and it finishes. Well, your music, any soundtrack, is going to have ups and downs. It's going to have build-ups. It's going to have longer breaths, and it's going to have music cues, and it's going to build up to some sort of climax. Not every song, but a lot of songs, and that's going to end. But it's not going to coincide where they are both like on the same wave, if that makes sense. You have your story wave, and then you have your music wave, unless you have a custom score that someone creates for it, which is not usually the case for the world and where we work. Unless you have someone actually building that custom score, you're gonna go online to some licensing place and buy a soundtrack, and that soundtrack is gonna have their own wave. But to have the most impact for your story, you want both your story wave and your music wave to be in line. You want that music to enhance and complement your story, instead of just placing a track and hoping for the best, even if it has maybe the style or the genre kind of works, but maybe the build-up doesn't, or the end is too long, or it's not long enough. But you really want to make your music to be in line with your story. So that's basically the tip, is edit your music to complement and enhance your story so that they're in line. I don't know if you can follow this wave I'm making with my this is why I'm doing a part 2 where you can see my editing, and what I'm talking about. But the key word in that tip is editing. Edit your music to complement and enhance your story. And sometimes you have to do a bit of both, editing your story and your music so that they are in line and coincide. But there's so many ways to do this. Every soundtrack has different sections, has different stanzas. They have sections where It might be like a slower rhythm, or quieter and not as full. And then you have music cues where it like has a more of a driving rhythm, and parts where it will like build and build to an emotional climax and a big hit. So you have all these parts of soundtracks, and what you can do is you can cut it. You can start cutting on those music cues, so you can make stanzas longer. You can duplicate sections so that it's longer for that part, or you can cut out certain sections that you don't like. If there's a section of the song that has a weird instrument, a weird electronic sound, that's usually what I don't like, the weird electronic sound. Just cut that out, and either put a different, like copy a section back in, or maybe it needs to build sooner. Maybe you have the part of your story where it really needs to have that driving rhythm to build to your emotional climax, but the song doesn't build till later. You can cut at that music cue, bring it right at the exact point where you need it to start building. And I mean, there's a lot of other ways to edit, and that's what I'm excited to show you when I do the screen capture, to show all these different things. And what's really cool, this is, I guess, a newer thing that I found. I found soundtracks on Alibi. It's called alibimusiclibrary.com. And I don't know, there might be other places like this, but when you buy a soundtrack, it comes with all the music stems, which is so nice. So it'll come with just the piano part of the song, or it'll come with just the strings part of the song, or just the underscore, and you can just use strings for that part of the section. And so that's what I did with this last project that I want to show you. It has all those different stems, and I used just the strings, and there's parts of the song where I could cut it, and it was just so much of a just ambient sound. I can actually layer it wherever in the track, in the soundtrack, and it sounded good. You didn't have different rhythms happening, because it was just like just strings, like a one note type string. I'm not like super versed in music, but anyway, I could use these sections to like emphasize certain points in the story, certain moments. Or if there's I have a part where the song kind of dies down and then it comes in a little later, but I needed something to fill it and something to increase the tension, and so I added this section of the string stem of the song that's just like one, like that note, holding that string note. Just put it like over that transition, so it wasn't completely silent, and it increased that tension. It's just the sound of it and the strings, it just kind of increased that tension, which was exactly what I needed. And so I'm excited to share this, because in my journey, I've learned so much in music editing, from just placing a track and fading it out at the end, to completely deconstructing a soundtrack and reconstructing it so it's custom to my story. And so I have all these points in my story where I actually mark, okay, here's kind of a change in the story. I want to change pace. Maybe I want the music to start picking up. And here's a point where she got some really bad news, so I need like a hit that's like sad, or like, so I mark all these spots in my timeline, and then I can just pick and choose parts of the track that will help construct that same emotion, that same rhythm that I already have in my story. And so being able to do that and actually see how much I've learned and improved in that music editing, and how much more of an impact it makes on my story, is really exciting. And I want to share that. I want to help get you guys to that next point where you're actually editing music almost like a sound designer or something. I mean, I'm not even close to being a great sound designer like some professional friends, but it's exciting to get to that new level of just having so much more control over your music and how you're editing your story. And so again, that tip is make sure you're editing your music to complement and enhance your story. And this week, maybe in a day or two, I will show you part 2, I'll show you my timeline, I'll show you the soundtrack, all the music stems, and then how I edited it to my story. So I'm excited to show you that. So keep an eye out. I am working on it. I'm not sure exactly when, but this week it's going to happen. All right. If you have any questions, or if you want me to specifically talk about something in the second video of how I do this, comment so I can make a note of it, and I'll try to do that for you. And that's all. So I'll see you in a few days. Bye.